getting on with us tonight for our panel that we formed a while ago. And we've had some distance since the last one because we've been fighting the COVID here. And we've had some battles going on, people in and out, and took a lot of our time. But we are happy to get together. And I talked to the chief, and we're going to make sure we do this quarterly so that the next one will be in April. And we'll get together again. And one of the things I think the chief is going to talk about tonight is the body cams. They've worked out very well for us, and it certainly gives us a great insight into what's going on out there rather than just trying to piece together some information. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our police chief, Robert Dawson. I'd like to thank Patrick Mangan. He's our IT expert who's here with us tonight, helping us out. Thank you, Patrick. Robert?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for attending the meeting. I really appreciate it. I know we've been communicating back and forth and everything. So I guess we'll open up the meeting with body cam video debrief and comments. It's the first thing on the agenda. Let's just start out with the emotionally disturbed person. If you can recall the 3 videos that I had sent out, that was the longer of the 3 videos. It was a little over an hour in duration. It basically started out, the call happened, it was after dark, it was 5 p.m. on January 6th. We got a call for an emotionally disturbed person. She had gotten into an argument with her maintenance man, basically, that also lives in the complex. And when we arrive, she's up on the 2nd floor in a window. And she's not really cooperative, and she's yelling some choice words out at the officers, and it kind of goes from there. And as you could go through the video, you start to see some additional officers arrive, and we're trying to sort out what exactly we have and what the exact situation was. A couple of times during the video, you see the person who was involved in whatever dispute had happened before we arrive. He must appear in the parking lot a couple of times, which really aggravates her even further and gets her worked up as we're trying to de-escalate the situation. And really what you witness through the course of that video is, it's like I said, it's over an hour. It's an hour of de-escalation going on. And I think it was a pretty good example. So the officers engage her, and she's not really wanting to communicate with the officers. She's extremely upset. She's mad. She even turns some of that anger towards the officers. At one point, she, you hear that she threatens the officers with a hammer. They actually see her holding a hammer at one point up in the window. And so when they arrive there, they're trying to analyze exactly what's going on. Do they need to immediately go into the apartment and try to save her? Is there somebody else in the apartment that's in danger? Those are the principles and things that are going through the officer's head. They decided that the situation probably was best if they kind of talked to her from the outside up to the 2nd story window. She was in the window. They could somewhat see her. So they were most comfortable doing that and taking up the escalation route that way. As the conversation goes through, if you're able to watch the whole thing, and I know it was quite lengthy, they actually start to engage in some conversation, and they're just trying to make small talk with her. And one of the things they asked her if she was on medication, which kind of triggered something in her, because she says, yes, I'm on a couple different medications. And she says something to the effect of, I didn't take it yet today. And she goes and takes the medication. And that was kind of a blessing, because I think by the end of the video, even if you had fast forwarded to the end of the camera video footage, you saw the humongous change in demeanor. She became calm, she was becoming rational, and she became essentially a different person, which helped us deal with her. She ended up willingly and voluntarily coming down to the door, opening up the door. She steps outside, and we just continue to talk to her. Again, we're just trying to figure out what's going on and trying to get her some help if that's in case what she needs, and she did in that case. So we can open up to some conversations, some comments on that. And again, this video was very recent. I didn't look around for any of these videos, any of these 3 videos very far. They're all from this month. And I think they're all going to be pretty good examples to kind of discuss. So we could open up the floor to the panel now for any comments, or how you thought the situation was handled. How do you think the woman that was involved, how do you think her feelings were when the officers were trying to engage her and things like that?
Anybody think the officers could have done anything different? We were there for how long? 2.5 hours?
In total, it's interesting, in total, so we're at the scene for about an hour and a half. The transport out to Garnett, 45 minutes each, going out there, and then the time they turn her over to the hospital staff and inform them of what's going on. And then another, 30 minutes or so coming back. All in total, it was about 2 hours and 45 minutes, and that doesn't even include the typing up of the report. And multiple officers involved in this. So you could see how one call could really tie up some resources in trying to get help for this woman. Go ahead, John, if you have a comment.
Sorry, I have a dog in the background, but I think first of all, I think that everybody that I saw and heard did an outstanding job, but that's typical for what I've seen on all the videos I've seen so far, being involved with this program. I was concerned about 3/4 of the way through. I think there was either a new officer or a sergeant or somebody that came and first began to engage her a little bit. And it was at the point where she was already getting better. But then he started to say something like, maybe we got to take you in to see the doctor or something like that. And at first I cringed because I was afraid that it felt like it was too soon to be able to switching to that sort of discussion with her, that things were going pretty well so far. It turned out it was okay, but that was my reaction. I just figured I'd express that in case anybody else felt that when they were watching it, or in case any of you guys saw that and maybe that's something that you keyed in on. I don't know.
Have we had an interaction with her before?
We've had some interactions with her before. And ideally, John, Councilwoman will speak next. Ideally, what we try to do in those situations, again, it doesn't always work out perfectly. We try to have that one calm voice. And that really goes into different situations, not only this situation, but if you could address a person with just one calm voice and you're making progress with that and gaining some ground and trying to get to that end goal, which was to get her some help, that's ideally what you want to stick with. And because when you start throwing different voices in, different pitches, tones of voices, it can aggravate the situation. Unfortunately, it seems it didn't in that situation. But ideally, that one voice of reason is really all you need, regardless of how many police officers are there, or mobile mental health ended up showing up as well. So that was another voice. Councilwoman Santiago?
Thank you, Chief. I actually had a couple of questions, and if you could just guide me as to who was there, how many officers, were there, who was the one that was talking, the most part talking with her. I thought he did a great job, again, of assault, like you said, just trying to engage her in a calm voice and so forth. And then someone, I guess, obviously that she recognized, and someone who's dealt with her before, was it Taylor, he said at the end? I thought he said his name. And, obviously she knew him. She, as you had said before, she's known, to our personnel and so forth. So if you could just guide me as to how many officers were there initially and who was the one that was talking to her the whole time, just to help me understand the situation, if you don't mind.
Sure. So initially 2 officers respond. I believe it was Officer Volpe, Officer Feo. And they eventually ultimately make contact with her and begin the conversation. The sergeant, and again, you could almost go back to the last meeting that we had when we talked about those other 3 videos that all, if you recall last meeting, they were all body cam videos that pertain to weapons being possessed by the people we encountered, a gun, a knife, and a hammer. If you noticed in all of those videos, and this is what we're trying to have the panel kind of notice and observe these things, supervisors all were there, if you noticed, right? We talked about that and how there was no supervisor at, say, a George Floyd type incident, how that could make us, just that alone can make a difference. So the 2 officers were there. Sergeant Sylvester also showed up because he heard what was going on. He wanted to check on the situation, and it went on a long time. And Lieutenant Feo showed up within a good period of time as well, too. So you had 2 supervisors on the scene because, let's face it, this incident had some potential to go a different way if it wasn't handled right, or if, the situation was different when we had arrived. So I liked seeing the supervisors on scene. That's always critical. There was an officer from a different police department that showed up that he had a rapport with her as well from dealing with her in the past on different things, whether they were similar to this or not, I'm not certain, but having that, and certainly if having an officer from a different jurisdiction come or something like that, or maybe a family member in some cases, if we believe that that's going to de-escalate the situation, we're really open to have that as long as it could be done safely. So I hope that
Thank
answers
you.
the question.
Sure, but so who was the officer that was talking to her the whole time? Because obviously we're looking for the body cam image, and somehow when I was trying to decipher who's talking before, it didn't match up with with the sound at the same time. So there's a little bit of a delay or something, I think. But
Yeah. So
throughout the process, who was talking to her?
the one that did the most talking, I believe, was Officer Byman.
Thank you.
But the other officers did talk as well, because I did hear them as too.
I just think that people need to realize how much police resources and time is taking up with a call like this. Sounds pretty simple. You go there, she's screaming out the window, you're trying to calm it down, finally she takes some medicine, and she calms down, and goes for some medical evaluation, all is well. Just you get to 2.5, 3 hours, it's a lot of time on one call. But that's a lot of stuff that the police do. I'm sure the chief will talk later about how many of these types of cases we have every single month. Just ties us up. Sometimes you like to get the office being out doing proactive work, not reacting to everything, but doing some proactive work, and you get tied up on these type cases. And that's what police do. They talk about, well, we'll get a social worker out there. Yeah, okay, so a social worker going to be there at 2 in the morning? So, I mean, to me, it's just when I looked at it, I was like, man, that's a lot of time spent on one call. But that's the way it is today for these young officers. It's not easy. I can tell you in my day, when we get calls like that, we've been there about 10 minutes. Of course, I'm talking about 1970. We'd be there about 10 minutes. Now, better trained, know how to calm people down. And then you're a little out of your lane. I mean, you're a police officer, not a social worker, but you better have social worker skills to be a police officer today, or it's not going to work out for you. All right, what's the next one?
Next video, we'll talk
I have
about.
a couple of questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Neil,
Go ahead, Tom, be my guest. Go first. Go ahead.
thank you very much. Chief, I noticed when the woman was being placed in the car, the officer asked her if she had any weapons. Is there a policy as to whether or not when they check or do not check? How is that determined?
Sure. So we do have a policy on that. Anytime we put somebody in the car, we check them for weapons. A lot of times, even if they have a bag, let's say a woman has a purse and we're going to do a transport, we'll put that purse in the back so it's not accessible, whether it's searched or not. So yeah, absolutely. We don't want anybody in those police cars that hasn't been at least, patted down and checked for weapons, because it just makes, for an extremely dangerous situation as, the officers are trying to transport them. And again, we're doing courtesy transports at times. We have somebody walking down the street and, it's cold. Sometimes it's better off just to make sure they get home safely. We'll give them a transport. We're transporting people under arrest. We're transporting people to court. So we're doing a lot of things like that. So we got to make sure our police officers are safe.
Thank you.
And you just hit on what I was really speaking on, which was, the time PD takes to transport these patients and people who need help. It's not just policing. Now they got to take them and bring them to where they need to go. And, they do a lot besides just policing.
And that's certainly true. And it's not only the police department. If it's someone that's very cooperative, that we don't think will be a problem, the ambulance does a lot of transports as well. So it's tying up police vehicles at times and police officers, and other times it's tying up ambulance corps members and the like. So that's something I think we'll talk a little bit later on the last bullet point of the agenda. We'll talk about the calls that we've gone on and our CIT unit and how many calls we handled and the transports and the things like that. And some things I'd like to see done in the county and some change. Doesn't seem to be going there yet, but people really need to get in gear in the county, because this is not a problem just unique to New Windsor. This is not only countywide, statewide, across the country. And we need some things to start changing here because it's not improving, and that's where we're kind of suffering. Our CIT numbers, or which are our numbers that, we're engaging with emotionally disturbed people and documenting that and getting them to help. Those numbers are increasing every year, right? A lot of people thought 2020, the COVID year, was going to be the worst year ever. Everybody's home, a lockdown, and everybody's kind of having some tough times mentally. And we saw a big increase in 2021, and we're not seeing it lighten up for 2022. Where are we going here? And we'll talk about a little more about that later on that topic.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next video. So you saw a video where there was a young man in the police, what was ultimately the police lobby. He was with his father, and the officer, basically they had come to the police window in the lobby of headquarters to ask for some information in regards to how the son that was there, he's 20 years old, how he could join into the military. This was a blotter. All it was a blotter in the record of community service blotter and assisted person with military information. So I ended up coming across this video. I thought it would be pretty good because you saw how it all went. It was a rather short video, maybe 5 minutes or so. So it was a 20-year-old man in the police lobby. This happened at about 9:30 at night. This was on January 4th. But a little backstory to this, I think, sets this video up more than what you had just saw, because there was a lot more to it. So that young man, he's a very good young man. We've dealt with that youngster, I say youngster, 20 years old, 87 times. So I think that puts it into perspective. And a lot of the dealings with that young man were with his family and domestic type situations, not always pretty. I won't go into details. A lot of disorderly adult type calls also with him, fights, and even some arrests. So the officers know him by name, know the family, know where they live. So as you can imagine, there's a rapport going on there when you deal with someone that much. If you just think of your own personal life or even maybe family members, how many times do you really deal with the police? How many times are the police officers at your house? How many times do you actually engage with the police in one municipality? This is one municipality, 87 times. So I thought it was pretty nice when the officer walked out and they kind of recalled each other. And not only it was actually a positive meeting. Oh, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. They fist bump. It was actually great. Recognize the father. They get talking about the military. And again, these are just what we did. These weren't staged for the panel. These are just calls I just was clicking through and found. And I was pretty impressed with how the officer handled just simply getting the military information to the youngster. He ended up giving the information for the Marine Corps and the Army. And not only did he do that, he gave him his business card. I think he actually gave him 2 business cards, one to the father as well. And if these military numbers don't work out for you, we actually have a recruiting Armed Forces Recruiting Center right in Vales Gate. So that's where he was ultimately going to go and call. Come back and see me. I'll help you out some more. I'll do whatever I need to do to help you. And I thought the officer did a great job. That was Officer Ferrier. And it was a positive encounter for someone that we've dealt with for a long time. He didn't hold, and it was obvious to me that he didn't hold any bad feelings against us, because to me, what that tells me is that we treated him with dignity and respect when we dealt with him all those times. He wouldn't be coming here looking for advice and help from a police department that treated him poorly 87 times. Not going to happen. So that's a little behind the scenes. We'll open it up to some comments on what you want to comment on, or what you have any questions for on that video.
Let me throw something out there. What if the officer, when he comes out, sees it's this guy who we've dealt with almost 90 times, we've arrested him, we know he has some mental health issues, and then he said, listen, bud, military won't take you. You need to go in another direction. Good night. Would you criticize that officer? What do you think?
I don't think I'd criticize the officer under those circumstances. I mean, it certainly takes so much professionalism and patience to continue to serve the same person. I mean, 87 times, that may even rival some of my own youngsters at New Windsor. So, people are human. I can see how frustrating it must be, and knowing that you're going into a call that is probably going to take most of your night. That said, I commend the officer for, not saying that, not, succumbing to what would be a normal human reaction. It takes twice the energy to really dig deep and find that empathy and the training. But I think it would be understandable. I just think that, the outcome here was commendable and better.
And I think if any of you know Officer Ferrier, there was no effort or training necessary. That's him. That's just his personality. That's how he carries himself every day. So, but absolutely, his training certainly helps as well in cases, but he's just a great guy.
The officer, in my opinion, came across just as that, a great guy. And for me, that interaction possibly will make a big difference in this young man's life. Obviously, 87 times is not a normal situation. And as you had mentioned earlier, he did not hold that against the family, the son, the father. He did a professional job. And that speaks volumes. It made a big difference, and it's something that I will remember as another positive moment at the PD. So thank you for sharing that video. It speaks volumes.
Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, I agree with you, but I'd say even more so, like Chief Doss said, any youngster who had 87 encounters with this same police department and then turns around and goes into their station house to look for advice or help, that speaks tons, without a doubt. There's nothing you can say about that. I mean, that's not normal. So it speaks greatly for the New Windsor PD.
I was just going to say thank you for sharing that background, Chief Doss, because the interaction was impressive enough. Just to know the background just is even more impressive. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the third video. So I'll set the stage for this one. So this happened on January 21st at about 8:30 in the morning, just to kind of set the stage on that. We had a call of a homeless person sleeping inside of a laundromat, and the officers went down. They were able to encounter the person within the laundromat. He was actually sleeping on the floor, as you saw. On that day, I spoke to the officers that were actually on that call. It was 5 degrees outside. So certainly him taking up shelter in the laundromat wasn't unreasonable. But at the same time, that is a private business, and if they don't want him there, we get called and we have to go see if we can help him. As you saw, the person was treated with some dignity, some respect, as I believe you saw, and he was offered some assistance with emergency sheltering or housing or a warming center. He did take us up on that offer. He voluntarily came with us. We brought him back to the station where he could stay warm. We made some phone calls to again, even us being the police, we got to make some calls on that and see what we can do, but we have the numbers. We know who we can call for help. And we offered him the assistance, whatever we could do for him. He ultimately decided to just go to a warming shelter for the time being. And this is a transport that we did. We transported him right to the shelter. We didn't wait for anybody to come get him or anything like that. Just to expedite the matter and get him where he needed to be, we drove him to the warming center. And that was the extent of that call. And we'll open it up for any comments on that.
Hi, Chief. I have two questions. One, do you find that the calls that go out to help with mental health issues in the community, are they normally for people that you have encountered? So the 3 calls that videos that we see tonight, all are familiar to the police department in some ways. So does that tend to be the case for many of these calls?
Yes, for sure. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the CIT and the repeat calls that we go on. But certainly, most of the calls we go on are dealing with the same people again, and that goes for domestics, that goes for crisis intervention type calls, that goes for a lot of different things. Sometimes people's lives are complex, and they might be going through a troubled time. And typically, what we see is we'll deal with a person or a family for a few months or maybe a few weeks, and then something changes, and we're not dealing with them, and that frees us up to deal with someone else that's having some rough times. And it's a cycle, and that is what we see, though. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And my next question is, I know that I'll use an example that's particular to my line of work. So we are receiving, our school districts are receiving funds to be able to address the mental health issues that have surfaced as a result of COVID, just to be able to help us provide support to students and families. I wonder, is that something that is happening also for the police department or mental health community supports? Are they getting any funds to be able to establish programs and resources to meet the needs that the police department is experiencing, and perhaps just channel or address those needs in different ways so that it doesn't always fall on the hands of the police department?
So recently, the other side of the county, received a grant for a couple jurisdictions over there of over $1 million. Most of that grant is going to be used on the other side of the county. There's going to be some hiring of some new mental health professionals and a few different things. We haven't seen a huge change here. We do have some more calls where mobile mental health is getting involved and showing up, or even being involved in. It's not to the level where it needs to be. In my opinion, we have two areas of, when you're talking about mental health issues and mental health calls and the volume that we're seeing, we're having two different troubles with them as far as I see. We're having a lot of repeat calls. And as you guys know, we talked about it in the initial meetings that we had, that, every time we go to a mental health call, we have a whole policy in place. Everybody's trained up like we were told to get trained up. We have a form that's done. We get them the help that they need, like we've always done here in New Windsor. And now we've added even a form that gets, within 24 hours, gets emailed out to 4 different mental health associations, one being the county, so that there's no way that these individuals could fall through the cracks. We did our thing. We held up our end of the deal and notified everybody. But here we are the next day, the next week, going back again and again and again and again. And we're still holding up our end of the deal. We're doing our call. We're still getting the help again. We're doing the form. We're not just saying, oh, this is the 8th time we're doing a form on this individual. Why are we bothering? We're still doing our end of the deal. But I feel at times the mental health field, the mental health professionals are not holding up their end of the deal. And that's going to be something that me and the town supervisor are going to work on moving forward with, because I know I'm not happy, and I know he's not happy as well with that part, and why we have to go back. Because the whole point of this program, this whole CIT program that we bought into, at the end of the day, it's not working, and we're going back again and again and again. And then add the second aspect that I'm not happy about, and that is the constant transporting and tying up of 2 police officers to go to the hospital, whether it be out in Middletown or over here in Newburgh. We're losing security in the town because we're transporting individuals constantly. They either need to make some triage centers. Most of these individuals that we take to the hospital, they're basically taken care of and stabilized within 24 hours, turned around, and they're back out, which is great. That's fine. They shouldn't be held in the hospitals forever, right? they're stabilized, they're set up with the mental health system, medicated, 24 hours, they're back out. We need more of these triage. In my opinion, we need some of these triage centers locally and scattered throughout the county, not to where we're driving 45 minutes each way to a crowded emergency room. That's not doing us justice. It's not doing the individual that we're trying to help justice. I'll give you another little insight, and then we'll probably move on. Recently, we had somebody that was in the military. I'm not going to go into any details, but we had somebody that was in the military that was suicidal. That individual, before we as a police department were ever notified or got involved, went to a local hospital here in the county and sat in that emergency room for 12 hours. Was never seen by anybody, sat there for 12 hours. Got up, he was there with his girlfriend, got up and walked out. Then it becomes New Windsor PD's problem to try to find him. We got involved, made some phone calls, got the right people involved, and we got him the help. But that is absolutely outrageous. And things need to change in that regard. And we're seeing this again and again and again. That's one example off the top of my head. So I hope that answered your question. We'll talk a little more about the CIT program here in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other comments on the homeless individual on the body cam? That'll be our last body cam video. And again, just keep in mind too, I always solicit ideas from the panel before, we have the meetings and we set up the agendas. Keep that in mind, from here till April. If you do have something that comes up or you see something on the news or something like that of a call or how something happened and you want to see how we handled it, give me that example, like of, let's say, whatever it may be. I'll see if I can find a couple examples of that and provide it to you guys for the next meeting. So I always try to solicit ideas out of you of what you want to see, what you want to talk about. So, always have that kind of going in your mind, because I want the community panel to be as engaged as possible with what they want to see. It's not about what I want to present, it's about what you guys want to see and talk about.
Hey, Chief,
Yes, sir.
when are we going to get to the ones where people make mistakes or somebody comes in and has a bad day or something? Because all the ones I've seen so far have been outstanding.
I could try to look for those. We're certainly not perfect, right? We know that, right? So, what I will tell you is, and by all means, and that's what I want input for. So at the next meeting, when I solicit the ideas, ask for some, maybe a traffic stop that I had a problem with. Chief, find me an example of a traffic stop you weren't happy with. Why not do that? Let's talk about that. Maybe the officer made a comment or something like that didn't go over well, or didn't present the tickets to the motorist properly or something like that. I'm open to talk about those things, and that's why the supervisors from the sergeant on up review these body cam videos, because not only they're making sure that the customer service aspect of professionalism is there, and if it isn't, it's brought up to the staff and it's fixed. And that's why another aspect of these body cams that really we've truly liked was the aspect of us being able to go and check the quality of the work that we're doing. You could read a report, just like I could read that blotter about that individual that walked into the lobby and wanted military information. But until I watched that incident actually occur, wow, that gave a whole new light to that. And that was a positive way. Could it go south or be something I don't like? Why did he do that? What was he thinking there? That was dumb. It could go that way. But primarily, I got to tell you, we watch a lot of these videos and we're pretty happy with what we're seeing. And we're always trying to get better. We know we're not perfect. I'm certainly, there's issues here and there that pop up, but we address them. And I think that's a big part of it, is we just don't let it go on. We fix it.
I think that's one of the reasons that I was so hot on these body cams, that I wanted to be able to kind of look at things. And sometimes, you're disciplining the officer, but there's also some training aspect that will come in. Hey, look, Spud, see what you did? This is not how that should have gone. But these officers, they know too that this is being recorded. Sometimes they'll come to somebody and then we say, this is recorded right now, right? So I think it helps to put everybody on their best behavior, I think. And when you look at them, and sometimes you see them from other departments, and there's some things that you're like, whoa, wow, you're hoping that somebody addresses it. We will address it. I mean, these three things that the chief gave you tonight seem pretty far-fetched from police work. If you think about just in that term, police work, what is police work? Well, I guess you're arresting people, you're investigating accidents. These three things are a woman who's having trouble with her medication, a guy who's trying to straighten himself out and wants to go into the military, and some poor guy who's cold and sleeping in a laundromat. But these are the ones that they get involved in. But yeah, we are looking for those things, and I think the officers too. The body cams put you on what should be your best behavior. And to me, when I was very, very working hard to get them, that's one of the things I wanted to know. Hey, we're watching. Not you said and he said. No, really, play the video. Let me see what that says. So I think sometimes that helps to quell things and keep things down. You know, because somebody like the chief or one of his administrative boards is going to look at it. Eventually, I'm going to look at it. You know, sometimes it's a training tool, and sometimes you're going to discipline somebody. So I don't think that, no, I know that we're not afraid of something that's not right to address it. The last thing I'm going to do is ever kick anything under the rug. And I think everybody's ever been around me knows that. That if it's not right, then tell me why you did that. You know, and sometimes I like to hear from the person, like, what were you like seeing? Okay, so I'm the Monday morning quarterback coming in and say, why don't you call this play? But what did you see? How'd that go? So a lot of this stuff is training too. But yeah, John, they'll pop up. Those videos, there's no doubt in my mind that eventually 1 or 2 or 3 will pop up. And we'll share them with you. And we'll have already reviewed it and taken whatever action is necessary to take. And I don't think we're just whitewashing anything. This is what we're seeing. And these are the kind of things that cops do every day. And to a young guy or a girl who's getting into police work, it sounds very exciting. It's not. It's boring. 90% of the time, it's just absolutely total boredom. And then every once in a while, you wish you were someplace else. But these are the kind of things that they do, and they're well trained. They know how to handle it. They know that somebody's going to look at this video. Somebody like the chief or one of the lieutenants or one of the sergeants going to see what you did. And I think it does help to put you on your best behavior. It would be. So yeah, no, if there's some ones that are a little off the rails, we would definitely share that. That's my comment.
I agree.
Would you remind me how many full-time officers we have?
Absolutely. We're down to 46 right now.
Thank you.
And a great deal of them are young officers. And just the other day, you saw 2 cops get shot in New York City. One guy had 3 years on, the other guy had a year on. And the guy who finally shot the bad guy had like months on. So there's a lot of young officers running around. And we're very cognizant of that. And that's why there's lots of supervision. The town spends a lot of money hiring supervision for every shift. In other words, there's a sergeant out there all the time. You know, and it's kind of trying to mitigate these incidents. And these incidents will happen. There's no way that they won't happen. Just a matter of time, it'll happen. We had a cop shoot, one of our cops shoot somebody a few years ago out on 32. Guy was going for a gun, and our guy got his gun first and shot him. So this will happen. But now we have body cams, and that's like detectives now are really not Dick Tracy's anymore. The first thing they ask anybody, any cameras? Anybody got any cameras on their house? You got any cameras on your business? You look at it, and there's no doubt as to what happened. That's why I really am a big proponent of the body cams. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not so good. So you got to call them the way you see them. And I can assure you that we are going to call them the way we see them. What's your next on the agenda?
All right, next on the agenda will be the community satisfaction survey. So this, as you know, we did one back when we were doing the reform meetings. And the panel decided that we would continue that. So we've gotten that achieved. What we did was we ended up going out, and I worked with the IT department, and we developed a QR code, which will ultimately what it does is you use your camera on your phone. It brings you right to to the town website, right to the police side of the town website, and it brings you right to the survey. And our intention here was a couple things. So I looked closely at, I did a lot of research on these surveys, and what I found was a couple things. I wanted it to be really community satisfaction oriented. And what that means is when someone does the survey, they're putting in their feelings on how they felt the whole situation or encounter with the police officer went, whether they were the caller or whatever had happened. So we changed a lot of the questions on there. I did. And I got to say, the IT department, Danielle Barrett did a great job and really got this done for us. So we changed those questions, and it really gets on to the perception of how the officer responded to their issue or complaint. Was the officer respectful? Was he courteous? Was he concerned? Did he listen? Did he take time to explain his actions? And the overall satisfaction of the situation. And we're just kind of instituting this now. So what we did was we made up some business cards with the QR codes and some information about the police department to be handed out. So let's say you had a car in your driveway, someone went into it the night before and maybe stole some money out of it. You called the police to report that larceny. We come to your house, we take the report, we do what we need to do. Before we leave, we give you a crime victim card. We give you one of these community satisfaction survey cards, and you would then therefore go on, if you would like, and fill it out. So we have business cards made up. We also made the decision that all the police officers have business cards on them with their name and information and shield number and those kind of things. And on the back of those business cards is also going to be this satisfaction survey. And then again, anybody could go on the police website and do the survey as well. So one of the things I think we talked about as a group was to have this survey not only just for a couple months out of a year or do it annually, we're just going to keep this going continuously. What that'll allow us to do at any time to go on and look how we're doing most recently. Well, let's see how the satisfaction of the survey was over the last 3 months, over the last 6 months. And we could really tailor if we're doing a good job or not, or if we need to kind of change things to meet those needs of the community. We could parlay and meet those needs and do those things because we're getting that constant feedback rather than just running a survey in the fall, let's say, or every other year. This is going to be a continuous survey. And not only that, these results can be shared with our police officers, which is another good thing. You know, good or bad, we'll be able to share that feedback with them so they know how they're doing as a group. Oh, we're seemingly doing a good job, or this community is not happy with this aspect or this of what we're doing, and we could change that and do some training to make sure we're meeting those needs. So that's where we are now. Some of the ways we're getting this out, again, when we go to calls, they're going to be handing it out. The reason I really wanted to get this done right away was for our bike patrol. When our bike patrols are out there and they're engaging the community in the developments, and as they're driving around on their patrol on the bicycle, not only can they give them some information of maybe something that's going on in that development and spreading the word about something, getting to know the community, they could put out this satisfaction survey and get some feedback on what the community is thinking and what the community needs. And there is a free form field on there where you could type in anything you want if you have a concern or situation you want to explain. And then there's also an optional field where you could put your name, information, phone number, so we could follow up with you. So that's also important, but that's optional. We're not necessarily, you don't have to do that. If you just want to put some feedback, we're good with that. And we have these survey cards at the dispatch window right at headquarters. And we also have them with the community policing unit. So anytime they're out, they're going to have these satisfaction surveys with them as well. And that's really our best way to get it out. Again, get it out to the community as best we can. And we're certainly open to other ideas as well, if you have any ideas on how we can better get them out. Any feedback on that? And again, that was on our list to get accomplished for our plan for the reform panel. So we're glad we got that done.
Chief Doss, have you guys seen an increase in the usage of that form since it's gone to the QR code?
No. So
Okay.
we're just getting this out in the last month or so. So I don't really have even enough results to share with the panel at this point. Certainly by April, our next meeting, that'll be one of the things on the agenda. I already have 4 things on the agenda for next meeting. So that's going to be one of them, because I'm sure you're going to want to see the feedback, and then that'll get emailed out to everybody. Because I think that's a big thing. You guys are here as stakeholders in the community. Most certainly you need to know what the feedback is and where we're going, or where as a panel, what direction we should be going in if there's issues. So I will certainly share that information.
Great. Thank you very much.
Another good thing about this, what Danielle Barrett at the IT department did, it's not costing us anything to do this. I know when the other surveys were done, especially in different municipalities, some municipalities forked out several $1,000s to get surveys done, just because it was almost a requirement of the reform meetings when they were initially happening and mandated by the state. This one's not costing us anything, and it's going to be open and continuous. So we're happy about that, because we don't want to just do it for a month and pay a big bill. We want it 12 months every year, have that information coming in. So again, I can't stress what a good job she did for us, and it took a lot of work on her part.
Chief, I had a thought. Maybe you could post it on your Instagram page or Facebook, once a month or something to engage at that moment when people are scrolling. It could be a good capture.
Absolutely, that's a good idea. So we'll do that. Also, what I think is important too is, doing that will give the perception of what somebody's maybe seeing on there, but what the heart of this is, what we want is when, somebody was pulled over by us, to give them one. When somebody calls us for help, give them one. Somebody in a domestic incident, give them one. And then that's they just reacted with us, just had something where they got to talk to an officer, had an officer help them or not help them, whatever happened. Let's hear that feedback. And that was part of the survey that we did initially for the reform panel, was just how do you feel about your PD? Have you called them in the last 6 months? We kind of got away from those type questions because we want to know the work that we're doing, and is it satisfying the need of the community? Because that's why we're here. And if we're not achieving that, we need to change and get into the direction of where we're actually helping and doing what's needed. Or have the positive feedback that we're right on the page of what we need to be doing here. So that's what we're looking for. But certainly it does not hurt to put it out there and make everybody definitely aware of it. We actually, on the police end of the website, there's a whole tab there just for the survey, where you can go on and do that thing. So great. Okay, I'll make sure I do that.
Chief, as a follow-up, how do your officers feel about this questionnaire?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really poll them about it. I put it together, and that's what we're going with. The results, what I'll share with you is this. What I've seen as far as the results go, they're pretty impressive. So I don't really think that they would have a problem with it at that point, right? So I think it's definitely a positive thing. And again, it's just really making sure they're doing the procedural justice things that they were trained to do. Because that's really what the procedural justice aspect is making sure you're understanding what the problem is, getting the input back, making sure you're listening, making sure you're meeting the needs of what was to be done. We're not just going there, give me your name, give me your address, what was stolen, goodbye. It's more than that. We're community servants, and we're here for the community. So it needs to be more than that. And the feedback thus far, and again, on even going back to the other survey, certainly confirms that that's what our officers are doing out there.
Stop complaints, yeah, no, civilian complaints?
All right, so part of the initial reform meetings that we did for the state when they were required, we talked about civilian complaints, we talked about internal complaints, and we went over 3 years, about 3 years prior from that date. We talked about that, we discussed that. So I thought it'd be important to, now that 2021 is complete, to go over with you what we witnessed in 2021. Remember, about March of 2021, we instituted the body cams. That was kind of game changer and should help out with civilian complaints one way or another, positive or negative. Should be able to help us or prove that we were wrong. So that being said, so just so you know, in 2021, we had 16,441 calls, 16,441 calls. We made 568 arrests. We issued over 2,000 tickets, and we also responded to 568 domestics. So it's a lot of interaction that doesn't necessarily mean everybody was going to be totally supportive of what we're doing, right? Most domestic incidents, there may be a party there, one side or the other, that may not agree with how we're trying to resolve the situation, right? Somebody's probably really upset and somebody called us for help. So they may not be happy that we're even there. They didn't call us, the other person did. So you got to understand, or we're making an arrest because of there was a law violated. So it's not always positive circumstances that we're involved in here in the community, right? It's just by the nature of police work. So to break it down for 2021, that we had 2 official complaints from civilians come in, 2, and that's about what we've seen over the last 5 years or so. We get 1, 2, or 3 every year. We got 2 last year. I'll share with you. One was a harassment allegation, and these are complaints that get up to the administrative level, right? So I'm involved maybe in investigating them. The deputy chief of police is involved in investigating them, and they're investigated very seriously. Body cam videos, maybe taking statements from people, following up, those kind of things. Whatever needs to be done, we do to prove it one way or the other. So that harassment allegation was investigated by the police administration, was unfounded. There was another civilian complaint regarding the unauthorized use of the police records computer system, and that was alleged to have happened off duty by the complainant. We investigated that, and it was determined to be unfounded. The officer didn't do it. Being the proactive agency that we are, the proactive administration that we are, sometimes we hear something happened or something occurred or something may be happening, and we begin to look at it. And we adopt it as an investigation upstairs as an administration, being proactive to police ourselves before it turns into something different or bigger. We had 6 of those type internal investigations. 2 of them involved an on-duty accident with a police car. Those 2 investigations were substantiated. They did in fact happen, and the officer was at fault. We had 2 dispatchers violating department policy and procedures while dispatching. Both of those complaints were substantiated and did occur. And we had 2 cases of sick time abuse that we investigated, and those were also substantiated by administration. So 2 civilian complaints, 6 internal complaints. And I didn't find it down to the minute percentage of, all right, we responded to 16,000 calls and had 2 civilian complaints. I don't know. It's a fraction of a 1%, I'm sure. But a lot of these things, the sergeants do handle some. We talked about that in the initial meetings that we had. Someone might come in upset because they got a ticket. They first talk to the officer. If they're not satisfied with that, it goes to the sergeant. A lot of times the sergeant can resolve that. He may have to explain the court procedure. He may have to explain the ticket, maybe a little further in depth. And a lot of time, the person's satisfied with that, and that's where it ends. But sometimes it's either a more serious allegation or it comes to administration and we investigate it. That's part of what we do as our job. And just for a refresher, police complaint form, it's available on our website. Anybody could go on there, download it, fill it out, submit it. We have it at the police department. You can go to the police window and ask for one. We will give you one. And furthermore, me and the town supervisor are very much on the same page with this. If it's an email, regardless, or it's a phone call, that's all we need. We're going to start looking into it. It does not need to be on an official form. Doesn't matter. If the information gets to us, we're going to start looking at it and looking into it. We actually had one of these civilian complaints that I mentioned came in on the phone, but then it was followed up with it was United States Department of Transportation complaint form. I don't know where that came from, but that's what the person filled out and submitted to us. Didn't matter. We still looked at it. We got the information that we need. We followed up with that person, got more information that we needed, and we were able to investigate that. Again, doesn't matter what the form is. Everybody always tries to stress out about, I didn't get a form or I need a form. You don't need a form here in New Windsor. We're going to look at it. So I just want to reiterate that. And we kind of discussed that in the initial meetings. But so if there's if you have any input or questions about The internal investigations or civilian complaints.
Chief, I did some quick math. That's a lot of, it seems like that's a lot of calls, 16,000 plus calls handled by 46 full-time officers. It seems like a very busy day, week. Am I correct?
It absolutely is we're a very busy department, and a lot of those calls too also include ambulance corps calls, which we go to a majority of. But yes, absolutely, it's a lot of calls. But what I will kind of caveat that with, those are the numbers for 2021. They were, I think I think I disclosed the numbers for last year with you. I think it's included in the information I passed along. The numbers were a little lower than that from last year because of the lockdown and everything. But if you go back to 2019, we were handling 25,000 calls a year. And that's where we were typically for quite a while. So we're way down in calls if you look at it that way. 16,000, yes, Mr. Hubbard, absolutely, busy place. But we were handling 25,000 at one point. And that could be a number of things. One of the things I'll explain to you what it is. Car stops are down because we've told our staff in the height of this pandemic, and even in 2021 when it ramped up again, limit the amount of car stops you're doing, limit the amount of exposure you're getting to yourself. We need you to hear for emergencies. The traffic stuff that'll be there and we'll be able to do it. They were still doing traffic stops because sometimes it's a safety issue. But if someone's maybe running without a headlight or something, maybe we don't have to stop that person for our own safety and health. And we don't want to expose that person either. So just some stuff to think about. That's why our numbers are down. And obviously in 2020 with the lockdown, our call volume went way, way down as well because people weren't out. People weren't stealing stuff from the stores. People weren't doing this and that. So it definitely went down. So yes, absolutely. To have only 2 civilian complaints, and we kind of think that's unique to New Windsor, but in talking to representatives from the Orange County District Attorney's Office, they pretty much mirror that countywide. That, there's a perception that everybody's complaining about the police and people are going into police stations and complaining, and there's big investigations and cops are doing these horrible things. But their stance, and I've heard them say this, and I certainly don't speak for them, their stance is when you actually get down to the numbers and look at it, that's not the case.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do take civilian complaints very seriously. I personally get involved with them, with the chief. His department, he runs it, but I need to know that we investigated it thoroughly. I've also interviewed people after they've interviewed complainants, to kind of, in my own mind, make sure that we go in the right direction. But we do not get a lot of complaints. I can tell you in the state police, we would get complaints. It was just like routine, like brushing your teeth. They would be coming in. We're not getting a lot of complaints, but if we get them, I've stressed this to the chief and his staff, we've taken them serious. Someone goes to the trouble to call here to make a complaint, and we need to go to the trouble to take a hard look at it. And listen, many times there is no complaint. It's unfounded. Sometimes you can't substantiate it, so it becomes unsubstantiated. Sometimes it's something that we have to take some action on, and we have taken some action this year on some people for some minor indiscrepancies. But I'm very big on, if you go after the minor stuff, then they won't do the major stuff. So that sometimes I'm big on holding their feet to the fire on everything, so we don't at this level, and that's where we are here, this level. I don't want to get up here. So it's a difficult job, and everybody's Monday morning quarterback, and a lot of people aren't happy to get a traffic ticket. A lot of people are not happy that you're in the house about a domestic dispute, but that's their job. So some of these complaints, there's not a lot of validity to, but we look into all of them. Anonymous complaints, any kind of complaint. I don't want anybody to come and say, well, you guys, yeah, we did. Sometimes people make complaints that are absolutely insane. Once you look at it, you document the fact that you looked at it and this was that. Tell the person, like, listen, it's unfounded, we didn't take any action, and sometimes they're not happy. That's just the way it is. I mean, if the officer does something, you're going to take some action. If he didn't do anything or she didn't do anything, then you're going to write it up as unfounded. and a lot of complaints are unfounded. The important thing is that you look into all of that. And he takes it very seriously, and I take it very seriously. And when the people under you realize that you're taking it seriously, then they take it seriously. So I always see that as a big deal in police departments. People have to have faith that there are people like Chief Doss and George Myers who will look into things and give you a fair shake. And the officers need to know that you have their back too. I mean, it's not like, okay, we're going to get you all. No, that's not the case. Just want everybody to kind of just do their job. And sometimes when you're doing your job, things will happen. People get tased, fall, they get hurt. You know, it's a lot of things that go on. It's just not a real easy job anymore. Everybody's got a camera, everybody's watching you. So by and large, everybody's on guard, whether it's in the Windsor, the state police, the town of Newburgh, the city. Everybody knows that everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a camera, everybody's. So to me, it kind of like makes everybody on their best behavior. Even sometimes the general citizenry, when they see that you have a body cam, they'll just, all right, okay, just give me a ticket, let me go. And that's the end of it. Where sometimes people go, I mean, there's a guy went off the deep end the other day about getting some coffee or something that with some nuts in it that got his kids sick, and he was throwing stuff in 20-year-olds in the store, but it's all on body cam. Guy had a big job in New York, in Merrill Lynch, and they fired him. He's 46 years old, he gets fired for what? It's on the camera. Everything's on camera. So everybody knows that. And that works to our advantage everywhere. Whether it be the citizens, whether it be our officers, whether it be anybody, that it is, you can't dispute the camera. That's it. Is that you? Is that what you said? Oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, complaints to me are very important. That was important to me in my old life, and it's important to me here, that everybody thinks they're getting a fair shake, that someone will look at it. Sometimes they'll call me and say, well, I went to the police, didn't do it. They call the chief. Yeah, he did it. Call the guy. No, they looked into it. You know what I mean? They found out, and they did do something. We don't need to tell you what we did to the officer, but yeah, we took some action. That's all you need to know. So, as I said, it's not an easy job today. Much more difficult than it was many years ago. And everybody knows everything on the internet. Everybody's an expert. Right? And these guys are held, and gals are held to a very high standard today. Sometimes I feel sorry for them, because they're just trying to do a job, just like the guy working at the gas. Everybody's just trying to do the job. And the policeman is under the gun a lot. I don't know. If you have good police bosses, it's always been to me, if the bosses are doing a good job, then everything will be fine. If the bosses don't care what you said, don't worry about it. Forget about it. No. Because that permeates down to the ranks. Always been big on, if the bosses are doing their job, then you don't need anybody else. Because policemen, bosses, were patrol officers. They were sergeants. So you're not going to BS them. They did that job. So they know. Where a citizen is like, oh, well, okay, I guess that's policing. I guess that's the way it goes. But guys like Robert Dawson and his administrators, they were those guys. They know that that wasn't right. So as long as they're doing a good job, then that's why we don't get a lot of complaints. But the ones we get, we definitely go after them. See what's what. So that's just the world according to me on complaints. All right, what's your next item there, Robert?
All right, so I provided the panel some information without overwhelming them, of course, for the year-end summary of 2021. And I know some of the panel members wanted to see some numbers for the last 3 years, just to kind of compare and see how maybe COVID affected things, maybe see how in 2020 the New York State law reform also affected things. So I provided a lot of the information that had come in. And just before I forget to mention it, a lot of the details and things that we do, whether it be training or the CIT unit or community policing, the bicycle unit, every year, whoever's responsible for that detail does an annual report, gets sent upstairs to the administration. We review it, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. What we're going to do this year, we haven't done it in several years. Also, another thing that the panel wanted to see was an annual report. So I've assigned my secretary the detail of putting all the information. When we used to do these, We'll do a 2021 annual report. It'll be in color. It'll have some pictures. It'll have a lot of information of what we've done over the course of that year. Information about our award ceremony, who got what awards. And it'll all be there for not only the panel's reading and review, we're going to put it up on the website. So everybody that lives in the town or works in the town or anybody that wants to see what we do, it's another great positive way to get that information out. Because I think much like the panel was in our early days here with everybody, it was an eye opener. And I think when the general public or the general homeowner here in New Windsor opens up this annual report, they're going to be pretty awestruck on how much stuff we actually do that they don't even realize that we do. And they have every right of knowing everything that we're doing. So I think it's a great thing. We used to get these things published and we used to put them in all the convenience stores and gas stations and restaurants. Some of you, I'm sure, recall those days. I was the poor guy that had to go out and distribute all those boxes to all the stores back in the day. We're probably not going to necessarily print these, or maybe we'll print a limited run, but it'll be a PDF document that'll be available for everybody to watch, to look at, and pass along, and maybe even contact us with some questions or ideas for us. So we're looking forward to that. Years past, we didn't get that out until like October or so. Our goal here is to try to have it out by the next meeting completed. So we'll hopefully be able to discuss it. So a little side note. One of the things I passed along to you all, and we're not going to go over every bit of information that was passed along, the crisis intervention team summary for the year. I think probably worthy of going over here. 298 calls. 298 calls. That was an all-time high, significantly up from the year before. That's an average of 24, almost 25 reports a month, nearly one a day. So that body cam that you saw, that was over an hour long, figure one of those a day. You know, they're not all that long, but you want to kind of think of it on the average. And it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes we have two of them going at the same time. Sometimes we have, you know, two officers out in Middletown on their way back from doing a transport, and we have other officers here already on another call like that. You know, it's not always spaced out like that. 100% CIT officer trained response. That's always going to be that because all of our officers are trained. So it'd be impossible to not have that. Voluntary transports, that means the person was voluntarily transported. We did not force them 41% of the time. Orange County Mobile Response Team. Referral, that means, you know, they weren't a threat to themselves or others, but we lined them up to get help in the near future. That was about 39% of the time. And ones where we had to actually take the person into custody by either our police powers or by a doctor's authority. Sometimes we'll get a written document from a doctor that gives us legal authority to arrest the person and bring them to the hospital because they're a threat to themselves or others. Or we make that determination. Between the both of them, if you add it up, it's about nearly 20% of the time. So almost 300 reports. There was 10 instances of where force was used, so that's about 3% of the time, very low number. And remember, we're dealing with people that are in crisis, who aren't really thinking clearly at times, where we need to take them into custody to make sure they don't hurt themselves. They may be suicidal, those kind of things. So keep that in mind when you see that very low 3.4%. Something I'll caveat here, there were 9 consumer injuries reported. That means, you know, the person in crisis, they're referred to officially in the documents as, so there was 9 injuries, 3%. That's kind of a misleading number. Those are not numbers of injuries that we had happened when they were taken into custody, because that's almost what it defaults in your mind to be. That might be somebody who attempted to slice their wrists. We show up, we secure them, or maybe they're voluntary at that point, but they're injured. Doesn't mean we injured them. You know, sometimes, unfortunately, that does happen, trying to get them under control. Very rare, though. So don't let that number mislead you. 16 arrests were made. That's only about 5%. Another thing to note, too, if we have an overdose, this was actually, I really began this for the entire county. Why aren't we doing CIT forms for people that are overdosing because it's the same people that are going to help them as with our mental health people. So it gets them in the system so they're not lost between the cracks. So some of our numbers are skewed because we may not have been a person in crisis. It was somebody overdosed, we helped, and either had the ambulance or we transported to the hospital. So we do a CIT report on them now. And then it goes into detail which hospital. 74% of the time we were running out to Walk Hill, town of Walk Hill, somebody. Any input or comments on the crisis intervention team? I know that's a big one for everybody here.
It's a dangerous call. Any of those calls are very dangerous. I talked about the one down in New York. That was crisis intervention. The mother was having trouble with the son who was having some issues, and he opens the door and shoots 2 cops. So you just don't know what you're walking into. I mean, you think of the one that the chief showed you with the woman who didn't take her medication, but how about that one? Having some dispute with the mother, and she said, yeah, he's in the back bedroom. While they're walking down the hallway, opens up the door and opens up with a clock. So those are very routine, however dangerous calls. So there is no such thing as a routine call in police work. Traffic stop is a very dangerous activity for a police officer walking up to the door. But you don't know what you're walking up to. So we are well aware of the fact anything can happen any day that's going to really cause us some very serious issues here in our department. It's just anywhere you go, it's just a matter of time. Something will happen. You're dealing with that number of cases, it's almost one a day. Somebody is going to really, really be off the rails very bad. Something's going to happen. So, yeah, I think that Chief does a good job keeping his men trained and in line, and that's all he can do. And the rest is up to them, and sometimes they're in situations that require immediate reaction. Then everybody's going to come along later and dissect it. So I'm with John O'Malley. At some point in time, we're going to get some video that's going to be a little controversial. And we're going to take a look at it and see, well, what would happen here? But as I mentioned before, whenever I was looking at things like that before, I would try and put myself in the officer's spot that minute when that was happening. Not like, oh, whoa, why didn't you do this? What did you see? What caused you to do that? So, and sometimes it's just a slight hesitation will get you killed. I saw that in my old job. Guy hesitated, trooper hesitated, and he got shot. He didn't hesitate, he wouldn't have got shot. So these calls are very, very volatile. CIT calls that we talk about. And I worry about them a lot. I remember when we first got together, they were talking about, well, maybe take those calls away from the police. We'll have some social workers. They'd be calling for police in about 30 seconds. They don't want to get it. They would like to go with the police. As far as going by themselves, that was the craziest thing I ever heard. Because I've been out there on those calls. I mean, they can turn very quickly. Something looks like nothing, and all of a sudden, these 2 cops in New York City, that didn't sound like much of a call. Well, it was, no, I just have a little trouble with him. He's not doing this and not doing that. Where is he? He's in the back. One guy had, like I said, there was not a lot of experience on that call. Maybe somebody more experienced might have done something differently, but didn't look like much to them until the guy opened the door. Then the whole world changed. So, I mean, just not easy, that work. And these statistics are nice, but as long as they're supervised and you give them the best equipment and you hold their feet to the fire and you make sure that they get a fair shake, that's all you can ask. So I don't know. You got any more?
Yeah, so I'm just want to put out there that I'm extremely proud of my staff, the way they handle these things. We do review many of these type of calls, and we watch what they do. You guys all on the panel have seen several of these calls by now. You guys have reviewed many body cams at this point. Most of them, a lot of them, are in that realm of emotionally disturbed people, and you see the job they do. So I'm very proud of them, and and this isn't something that we just began 5 years ago. There were certain trainings that came out and things like that, but this has been the New Windsor way, certainly as long as I've worked here. I'm in my 25th year. we've always done the escalation. We've always taken our time. We've always done those things for a long, long time now. So maybe that's why I think the younger officers have learned from the older officers, this is the way we do it here. And I'm very proud of that fact. But I'll leave you with this. So I kind of touched on it before. I am extremely not happy about the number of repeat calls we're going on. I think the mental health is failing in that regard. And we're certainly going to start putting some people on notice about that. That and the transport aspect. There needs to come up, whether the sheriff's office needs to step up and start helping out, teaming up with mental health to get this done. But it's crippling the municipalities, and it's making the municipalities have less police officers to respond to emergencies because we're dealing with this. So whether that money, that was millions of dollars in grants that are coming in, or whether they're being, not spent properly or not spent in the right area. I know nobody asked me, nobody came to me and asked, what do I think? What do I see? Yes, there is a police chief representative that talks with the mental health representatives, but if you look at the number and you look at the program we're running here in this town, we'd certainly have a lot of information to pass along on what's working and what's not working, because we are very on the ball with this stuff. And I kind of found it ironic too that a lot of those dollars that went out, and again, they're not really going to the police departments, they're going to mental health. It was kind of came out in the press that it was, going to be going to law enforcement. Okay, they're going to pay for some training and things. Some of the agencies on that side of the county don't believe in CIT and don't do CIT, but yet they're getting the funds. Meanwhile, we're going along with the program and doing everything we can. As a matter of fact, next month we're getting trained. We're going to be the only agency in the county that's going to have. We got a grant through the state, executed through the county, where we're going to have 3 iPads are going to be given to us. They're going to be set up a certain way, so when we go to a call and somebody's in crisis, if mobile mental health can't respond, can't get there, we'll have these iPads to present to the person once they calm down, that they could go face to face on, say, FaceTime or a Zoom call, and begin that process of a face-to-face with a counselor or a therapist to get that ball moving. So we're the only agency in the county doing those things. So believe me when I tell you, we're on the forefront, but we're not happy with the way things are going, and we're going to start rattling some cages on it. I think it's time. It's past time, and we're just not happy with the way things are going. And why is that? Because it's an injustice to the person that needs that help, that's not getting it still, even though we're doing all these things. We had people that we've responded to 8 or 10 times in 1 year, and it's not necessarily over the course of 12 months. It might be over a few months. We're responding that many times to one person. They're not getting the help they need. Why? Someone needs to answer to that. And me as a police chief who stays up at night thinking about these things and can't sleep, just like the supervisor said, there's a problem with that, because every time we not only respond there once, twice, 3, we're multiplying the possibility of this ending in a bad way. I hope that makes sense. If we deal with a person, they get the help, we don't deal with them anymore, the odds of us being involved in something that doesn't end well for the person or the police officer is multiplied when we're going back 10 times. It's not necessary, it's uncalled for. And especially for an agency that's doing everything that we've been asked and extra. So a little food for you guys to think about before our next meeting, but we're not happy here.
What are those CIT calls? Runs around with a shirt that says New Windsor Police suck or something. We've been 10, 12 times we deal with her, and she now has a shirt that says something to the effect New Windsor Police suck.
I think she was on a video before on one of the other ones.
We
Yeah.
referred her and referred her and referred her and referred her, and here she is again, over and over. Eventually, something's going to happen, and it won't be good. So what we do is document everything, right? We got it all documented. So when something bad happens, we go, okay, here's the action we took. What did you do? Oh, nothing. I guess this is on you then. So we are very careful about documenting all these things, because eventually something's going to go wrong. I don't want it to be wrong on our end. So whatever the expenses or the manpower, we'll do what we have to do. And that's all we can do. Then it's up to whoever else should be doing their job. If they don't do it, then something goes wrong. Then let them explain why they didn't do it. So I don't know. I think, do we have any video of anybody being tased? We have done that lately? Any tasing?
We rarely tase somebody, if you could believe, maybe once, maybe twice a year, not very often. I'm
Okay,
sure we
no.
must, yeah.
Well, we'll have to look to see if we have that, because to me, that's a great tool for the police today, is the taser. In my day, you would hit them with a nightstick or wrestling around on the ground with them. This is kind of like, and if they've ever been tased before, all you have to say is, okay, I'm going to tase you. They're like, that's a no, 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 no. I've been down that road before. So one of those videos will pop up. Let me take a look at it. So how long do you go before you actually tase them? Right? I mean, you're going to say, hey, better stop. I'm going to tase you. That's probably something to look at. And what came to my mind was we did see a video once where there was in a trailer park. It was nighttime and 3 or 4 cops were down. And some guy didn't know that one of the people he was running to was a police officer. And if that cop would have shot that guy, well, it was a right to shoot to me, but he didn't shoot. Right? He took that extra minute, and then the guy realized it was a policeman, and he fell to the ground. Right? But if the officer would have shot him, I don't think I could have criticized him. Right? He had some kind of weapon, and he was running at him. But he took that extra second, and the guy didn't realize, and he went right down. He had no idea that he was running at a cop. He thought he was running at the guy that he had the altercation with before. So we did have that video. I remember that. And that's a little more like, okay, so let's pull this apart and see what that is. So maybe next time we meet, we'll have some videos that maybe could be a little more controversial. It's okay, because to us, it's a training issue too. Not always discipline, but a training issue.
So I have the preliminary numbers for the use of force. I didn't give them to you guys. It's going to be something I have for the agenda on the next meeting in April. But just to give a little bit of a heads up, because I think these are kind of surprising as well. OC spray, 0 uses in 2021. Taser was used once in 2021. No firearms, no baton. So if we're taking people into custody, we're,
You're talking them down. I mean, I used to say to people a lot of times, it's not personal. Just put your hands behind your back. Don't hit me, because that becomes personal. So these officers are a whole lot better trained than that kind of nonsense that I used to talk about. So if you have no pepper spray, 1 taser, no baton, and no firearm, obviously the training is working. And no one's getting hurt on our end, because that's the other end. I mentioned it before. You hesitate, you get killed. And I worked with a guy here in Monroe who got killed because he hesitated. So that's the call that they have to deal with. But then if they don't hesitate, they do something, then people like the chief and myself come along, and you're kind of looking at it, and the DA's looking at it, and people are talking about you getting fired, you're going to lose your pension, you're going to lose your house. So a lot of those things are on the line for these people every single day that they come to work. So I don't know. I think that's, yeah, I didn't realize that we had hardly any physical force. Which tells me that there's a lot of interaction that goes on to calm the situation down. It's great restraint with that woman to stay there that long. Talking to her, you know what I mean? And some lady, come on, I might get off in an hour. Did you stop? Those are the kind of things that used to go on. I mean, listen, we got to do something. I'm supposed to meet somebody when I get off the shift. We got to do something. Now you stay and talk, and you see what happens. And she didn't take a medication. She takes it, and she calms down, and everything's good. I don't know. You got any more?
Anything on the community policing unit? That was some information that was provided. I think I know it was certainly surprising to me. I also provided you guys with the Narcan use.
Yeah.
I know Ms. Briscoe Perez, I shared with her earlier, and I know we kind of went back and forth. Certainly 2021 was a record high for our Narcan administrations. This doesn't count the ambulance corps, who also does them. A lot of time we're there first, and we have it, everybody has it, and we administer it ourselves. We had 29 administrations of Narcan, 29 overdose calls that Narcan was utilized on. and 27 of those patients survived because of the officer's actions. 2 people died. It was too late to save them. And if you look at 2020 numbers, it was lower, but still high, 25 with 22 saved. And then if you go to 2019, again, this heroin epidemic was still going on in 2019. We had 7 administrations of the Narcan and 7 saved. So it went from 7 in 2019, we're up to 29 now in 2021. What's 2022 going to hold? So credit to the officers here as well for saving these individuals. 27 people. It made the difference for them. I also furnished to everybody the training report, which is basically a training summary of the 2021. And then we had some comparison numbers to look over 2019, 2020, 2021. You could see the drastic drop in arrests from 2019, especially into 2020. 2020 is when the law reform started here in New York State. We went from 1,608 arrests, 1,608 arrests in 2019, down to 525 in 2020. And last year, 568. So it kind of stayed pretty steady since the law reform started. Accidents. I know Ms. Briscoe Perez was asking about this as well. We know there's a huge amount of traffic out there. I know the supervisor battles with that every day and what he can do to eliminate that traffic in town or control it a little better. And we're doing all we can on this end, but the traffic is the traffic. And as far as accidents go, we had 979 in 2019. We're down to 750. 2020 is obviously an odd year with the lockdown, and I don't know if that's really a number you could use. It was certainly significantly down in 2020, but we were significantly down in 2021, 750, which is down, which is good. Parking tickets down. We're having a lot of issues with the fire lanes right now and around Vales Gate, around the New Windsor Post Office, around some of these strip malls, around the grocery stores. We're targeting that now for the past couple of weeks. So you will be seeing a number increase in parking tickets for sure. So please, if a car or 2 is there, they shouldn't be there, but okay, when there's 8 or 9, that's a problem. And we can't just ignore that. We need to act on that because it becomes unsafe. Domestics, that was another question that was asked by some panel members. Where are we with domestics? When you look at those numbers, take COVID out, take reform out, doesn't really matter. It's increased every single year. From 435 in 2019 to 567 in 2021. So Mr. Hubbard, you talked about how our call volume is high still, but it's down since 2019 when we had the 25,000 calls. But that number really doesn't matter when it comes to domestics because our domestics are way up. So that number did not correspond with our call volume being down, unfortunately. We would love for our domestic numbers to be down. And that's another thing, much like CIT, we take very seriously. We document with a certain form. The state is notified. We have the fearless representatives following up. We have our detectives following up with victims. We're still making those arrests. A lot of felony arrests are mandated, especially on domestics. And call to schools, that was another aspect some panel members asked about. And if you just compare 2019 to 2021, taking out 2020 when the lockdown and school was virtual, that's not really a year you can use. It was 1 call apart. So there was 138 in 2019, 137 in 2021. So that has remained consistent. And those could be anything, any type of call. It could be a disorderly student. It could be somebody lost their purse in the school. It could be anything. So those are times we responded to schools. So it seems pretty steady. And we have, we have 5 public schools in town, plus the daycares, the day schools, and those kind of things. Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. Any questions on any of that information that you want to go over or need clarification on?
Domestics, if I may inquire, are there any trends that you're noticing with the domestics?
Not necessarily trends. We're getting a lot of domestics in the local hotels. That seemingly keeps to be increasing. And we're responding to hotels for a lot of domestics. And what we talked about before, repeat calls, how many times are we dealing with the same people? Many times it's domestic wise. We'll be there again later in the day. We'll be there tomorrow. And we're doing what we can to get those services for whoever the victim may be in those domestic situations, getting family court involved. Fearless is great. They have all the resources and who needs to be involved, and advocates and shelter information and those kind of things. So I feel we're holding up our end of the bargain, but we're still dealing with a lot of domestics. And those, as the supervisor mentioned, can also be very volatile and can be very dangerous. And that's what happened with the two officers now that have passed away in New York City. That was a domestic, right? So you never know what you're going to encounter when you're off there, and you never know. You always have to watch your back. We're trained. You know, it may seem like, you know, we're taking action to make an arrest, but then suddenly a family member is turning on you because now they're upset.
Is there, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there a minimum of 2 officers or more on a domestic?
Absolutely. It's always a minimum of 2, and the other officers are certainly listening up. Or if certain circumstances are occurring, there may be a weapon involved or something like that, you know, you're going to have a sergeant responding as well, or even maybe multiple officers if they need to secure a perimeter or something like that. Certainly, you know, so absolutely 2 minimum, even for transports to the hospital, we have 2. It's officer safety. So thank you, Dr. Ruback, as well.
Thank you.
You know, the chief and I talk all the time that people are just angry today. And I don't know what they're angry at everything. You see them in the store, you see them on the road. People just seem to be angry. That's an issue that creates a lot of these different scenarios that cops need to get involved in. I mean, we decided a long time ago that we were not getting involved in the mask issue. Like, I'm not having an officer roll around with somebody because they don't want to wear a mask. But it just seems to me, and I've talked to the chief about it almost daily, that people are just angry today. And I don't know why, but they are. So that causes a lot of these domestic things and, you know, road rage and this craziness that I don't know. It just seems like people are angry, whether it's the COVID that had them locked up or maybe the economy, I don't know, but they are angry. And you really got to watch out for that. Really, really angry. If you watch TikTok or online, these other things, you see these videos that are just absolutely like, what are you, nuts? So we have those little incidents in town too.
Road rage.
Yeah, road rage and I don't know. But listen, I just want to say I appreciate that you guys, it runs a little late for us, but we like to kind of stay in touch, kind of hear what people have to say. We know that we're not right every day. We're not that crazy to think everything we do is right. Although sometimes I think that, but we're not. And right, Patrick? Right. My IT guy knows that. I like to think I'm right every day. But, you know, we like to keep in touch with the community, have some feedback, and hopefully in April we'll have some more things that we can bring out. And I would like to see some video that is a little more controversial, so we can see how these officers are reacting and what they're up against. Yeah. So I don't know. You have anything else?
Just one last thing. So I just wanted to, one last quick thing. One of our panel members since our last meeting, you know, we're talking about community involvement and getting the police involved in the community and the community involved in the police. So I just want to just acknowledge something here quick. So late last year, we had a local jurisdiction had a murder. It wasn't here in Windsor, but it was local. And they ended up figuring out who committed the murder. It was a handgun was used. And they began looking for that individual who was wanted on a warrant for a murder. Local jurisdictions, several jurisdictions were searching for this individual. Task force were involved. They couldn't locate this individual for months. One of our police officers got involved, Officer Hardy Pierce, and he was able, by utilizing his contacts in the community, was able to get information on where this individual was. From the time he developed that information, in less than about 12 hours, that person was taken into custody and was taken into custody safely. Nobody got hurt, no police officers in that individual, nobody was hurt. and that person was taken off the street. As you can imagine, that's a dangerous individual to have on the street. That person, he was well aware of the warrant. He was hiding out. He was attempting to elude police at all times. He went dark on the internet, and he was hiding in New Windsor. So I just want to commend Officer Pierce for getting that information and making a difference. And it was his involvement in the community that made the difference. Because when the police are involved with the community and the community is involved with the police, we're safe. I can't stress that enough. That's why we're here meeting as a panel. That's why we're here as police officers. And we don't ever forget that. So I just want to acknowledge Officer Pierce's work. That's just one thing that he does. But we're lucky to have him here in New Windsor. We're lucky to have a lot of our police officers. So thank you, Officer Pierce.
I appreciate that, Chief. Thank you.
Hey, Hardy, you ever do anything wrong? He's a good officer. We're very happy to have him. Anybody
Thank
have anything? Yeah, well deserved. Anybody have anything they want to throw out here before we call it a night?
Yeah, I was certainly impressed with Officer Hardy lifting up dummies at the course. I will never get on his wrong side. Thank
That's a
you,
very
Officer.
good idea. That's a good idea. Don't get on his wrong side.
You're welcome.
Neil Fernandez had a comment, I believe. You're on
Neil?
mute, I think.
Thank you, Officer Pierce. I appreciate that. But I was just curious. We look at all different sides of everything. And Chief Doss, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I got a question. I'm just curious as to what would you say is the morale of your officers in lieu of everything that's going on? Because they are so under pressure these days. They don't have an easy job. What's the overall morale, you'd say, of your officers? Because I'm just curious how they feel.
Sure. So that's a great question, and that's an important question, I got to add. So I think right now it's low. I think our morale is low right now, unfortunately. So between the pandemic, the law reform, before they can make an arrest, in most cases, they have to go through a process with the district attorney's office to see if they even want to prosecute an arrest. So a lot of their powers were taken away as a police officer to go out there and fight crime. A lot of times, the person, even some DWIs in some cases, in a lot of cases, they're not being arrested until a month later, until the labs come back or until the paperwork is all set up and things. And some of when we get that, some of the law reforms that have happened were for a reason. There definitely needed to be some change. But it definitely affects morale. And I think, a lot of things, the police department as a whole, it's demanding to be a police officer between the shift work, between some of the stuff that happens in the police department. I was told once, and I thought it was a pretty good point, that, police officers aren't happy with the way that it is, and they're not happy with change. So as an administrator, you have a tough task ahead of you to try to keep that morale up high. I know one of the things kind of started when I was a lieutenant and became chief was the EAP plan, where they have an avenue of having someone there to talk to, and that person understands because they're a peer, they're also a police officer. We have those things in place. They're available 24/7 to the police officers. As a matter of fact, we just had a call that's involved in our policy that when a call type like that, and there's a whole list. We make the referral automatically. We just had a call where we put a lot of stress on our people, from the dispatch level to the police officer level to the detective level to the administrative level that was even involved. We made the referral on all those people. So they'll be contacted ultimately by one of their peer advocates, one of their peer counselors, to see and again, it's up to them if they want help or if they want to talk. I think it's absolutely a great thing to talk, but sometimes, not in all cases, police officers like to do that. So we try to, make sure their mental health is there, and their family lives, again, could be stressful, right, too, between financial issues. We stress to them to stay physically fit and eat right and those kind of things, but working shift work, let's face it, It doesn't matter if you're driving a truck or you're working the overnight shift at a convenience store or you're working an overnight shift as a police officer. It's challenging. Just working those hours, I did them for a long time, and I could attest to it for sure. So they're up against a lot, and the job itself is just stressful in and of itself. So
Yeah. I would hope that they think that this panel is not a panel against them, because we also care about, their health, their mental health, and their ability, their families. We want them to be well. This is not this panel is not about going against the police. It's how can we also help them, and how can we just make things better?
I think they're aware of the job and how it's perceived. I know twice now we've had some panel members out to the range. That was one training thing that we did, and I thought the engagement back and forth between the panel members and the police officers was outstanding. And I'd want to do more of that this year, so hopefully look forward to that. I looked into there's a firearms simulator. It's out in where the police academy is, out in the border of Middletown and Walk Hill. It's not functioning right now. They're working on getting it fixed, but that's something where I would love to bring the panel out and some police officers and run through some scenarios where they basically put you, whether it be a panel member or an actual police officer, in a situation where they need to, quickly make some decisions, and it opens up some good discussion of what police officers are thinking, how they have to quickly react, and it's definitely a positive. So I'm working on that too, getting that done for the panel. I think that'd be a great, almost like a field trip for us to get together. Hopefully these COVID numbers are going to start dwindling down, and we'll be able to not have these virtual meetings anymore and get back to what we know best at meeting in person. So we have some stuff to look forward to, and I definitely want some more engagement between the panel and the officers. I always look forward to that. I think I'm probably the most excited person for that in the department, but and I know a lot of you see them, weekly, whether you're working at a school or whether you're a council member or whether you're working in the court, you're around, and we know there's a lot of engagement. So that I always look forward to that. So, this year, I would look forward to a lot more, especially with COVID lightening up here.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, I just want to make a comment, if you don't mind. I just wanted to touch on what Mr. Fernandez said, which is something that I wanted to bring up. First of all, thanks for sharing everything that the department is doing and so forth. But and of course, I believe that we should be listening and following along from the civilian complaints to the great work and the challenges that our officers are meeting. So here is a question: not just should we be listening, what can we do to help? I'm not going to speak for anyone else on the panel, but I'm sure. If we can, I know Ms. Rubeck just mentioned that St. Chris is exploring contracting with the Office of Mental Health. What else can we do, as an extension? How, again, if the hope is to make the whole big picture better, how do we help? How can we help?
Well, understand a couple of things. So the officers, they're paid very well. They have a lot of good equipment, and you, as being part of the town board, have allowed for that to happen. And getting them the equipment they need to do their job, because if they didn't, that would certainly add a lot of stress. So we're fortunate to have that equipment. If we can keep that coming, I think I just came up with an idea. I think that will be very good. How about I put a message out to our people and ask them, what would they like to see? I could perceive what I think should be done, but let's poll the staff. I think that would probably be our best avenue for the information you're looking for. And I know we recently just worked together on getting those toys and those bins for children that we come across in crisis, or even we had a posting online on Instagram of recommendation, maybe even being able to use some of those things for adults. And I think that's correct. But I want to see more of that, right? So, we're doing those things. I know Councilwoman Lincoln, I've already discussed with her getting involved with the National Night Out and having a big event here in New Windsor out at the park. I've talked to the supervisor about that too. He's on board. So I look forward to that. That's something we've done kind of departmentalized in different developments in town, but now we're looking to centralize it, especially with the support of the town board, and making it a bigger event for community to come out and interact with the police. And that can only help things as well. So I look forward to a lot of things, but let me poll the staff. And I'll certainly get back to you and the panel.
Great,
Thank
Thank you.
Anything else, anybody? Patrick, you have anything? Patrick, are you still awake?
Still weak.
All right, listen, thanks a lot. We'll get back to you guys. Hopefully we'll be able to meet, as the chief said, in person in April. So we'll, chief will get back to you about whatever date he selects and hopefully you'll be available. So have a good night and stay safe.
Good night.
Thank you.
Well,
Good night,
thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Bless
you.
you guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.